my thoughts on the Enneagram 9s. I actually know quite a few of Enneagram 9s, and they're actually statistically, there are more of them than anybody else in the world. So if I just recently talked to you about being an Enneagram 9, I promise this isn't directed at you. This was a legitimate question and answer. But in case you're not familiar with Enneagrams, they are just today's version of a personality type and some self-awareness into why you do what you do. God is a scientist and he groups people, and there were, in the 70s, it was choleric, phlegmatic, sanguine, melancholy, and then in the 90s, it was the Myers-Briggs test, and then this is the Enneagram, and it has some different types of beginnings, but it's still observable, yet still subjective science. And the Enneagram 9s are known as the peacekeeper. And if you do a study of Enneagrams, it goes according to the numbers chronologically. And if you're a 9, then they would say you have wings, whatever the number is next to you, this way, like a 1, or this way, which would be an 8. They call that your wings. And then there's growth patterns and things of that nature. So if you identify as an Enneagram 9, you are probably very peaceful and you don't like conflict. And I actually relate a lot to Enneagram 9s in so many different ways. And I'll actually be talking about that in the next video, which is how to stop being a people pleaser. And how, as an Enneagram 2 myself, that this propensity to avoid conflict that the Enneagrams are known for really plays into being a people pleaser. So some general observation that the Enneagram 9s, their main core motivation is to have inner peace and to not have their feathers ruffled or have to not overly think about some conflicts and things going on in their life or changes that are causing stress or discomfort. And their fear is that that's going to be changed, that they're going to have to deal with frustrations. They're going to have to walk through the uncomfortable aspects of relationships or life changes. So their desire for peace really motivates them, and sometimes that can be a good thing and sometimes that can be a bad thing. And an Enneagram 9 with a winged 8, they are called the advisor, or maybe the referee, because they're continually able to deal with other people and see a broad viewpoint and many different perspectives that can help them to bring about peace. So blessed are the peacemakers. That's a wonderful thing. And a 9 with a wing 1, which gears more towards like a righteous, just, doing things the right way personality. And they are called more of the negotiator because they really have an outcome of morality that they're seeking. Some of the things that I would probably encourage the type 9 to deal with is to not put your head in the sand, or more have your head in the clouds. There's one thing to focus on. It is the only way through discomfort is through. Because if you avoid it, it's still there. It doesn't matter if you are visionary and then you're like, well, I'm just going to change what my vision is. I'm going to think about something else so I don't have to deal with that anymore. It's still there. So your propensity of avoiding conflict really just compounds it, because you're not dealing with the molehill and then it becomes a mountain, or it becomes many, 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 many molehills in your life that do need to be dealt with. So rather than the fight or the flight, and your bent would be more towards flight. You don't want to deal with it. And so if you could, instead of having flight and finding a new vision, or just avoiding it altogether, or becoming slothful or apathetic, really work on some self-discipline and learn some skills about how to communicate or how to function through that, and take those steps. Because what happens when you're continually avoiding these things is that you're just the frustration becomes inside, and you're really wishing that everybody else would change so that you wouldn't have to keep feeling this way. Why won't they just? And so bitterness, a critical spirit, because all of these people and all of these situations and these life changes or the responsibilities that people are heaping upon you, and they don't know that it's a heap because you've never communicated it, they will begin to weigh you down, and you will become less of a profitable servant to the Lord. You do have a purpose in life. And when you aren't just walking through and facing things a little bit at a time and learning those skills of how to say, that really hurts my feelings, or I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, could you ask somebody else to do that, or give me a little bit of space so that I can accomplish something else, which is why it is great for type 9s to have friends who are more encouraging and patient, and who will provide an open frame of communication, that if this 9 could just express that they're feeling overwhelmed in a positive environment, then there is no conflict. So the 9 needs to work on being able to express conflict. And again, going to that next video about being a people pleaser, but also understanding that this is going to go into relationships. Because the 9 is a little bit more passive and easygoing, or phlegmatic if you're more familiar with that term, they tend to attract the go-getters and the type 8s and the command personalities, because the command personality, who's very driven, finds comfort and satisfaction in this easygoing person who's just gonna, on the outside, be like, yes, that's a great idea, sure, why not? And the 9s aren't having to make any decisions, they're along for the ride. And that seems very compatible until you get married and you realize, wait, this person is continually causing conflict. They are actually almost driven by conflict and that need to achieve and push forward and cause change in the world. Whereas the 9 is like, I don't like change, I don't like conflict, I don't like these uncomfortable conversations, and there's no freedom to even open up, because this person's just going to tell me why I'm wrong and why I need to get over it and why I just need to suck it up, and the reason I'm lazy is because I'm just not doing and so in that element of opposites attracting, I would just try as a 9 to be more self-aware of the long-term span of that. Is this person such a go-getter that they will bring more conflict than you feel like you can handle in the long run? Because you as a 9 do better in a more supportive, open, patient environment. Some people say that 9s do really well with 1s and 2s, which, we do seem to get along. So in a relationship, I would just be aware of who you're being attracted to, and are they a high conflict personality? Because that might be fun, and they might be drawn to you because you don't tell them that they're wrong ever. But then inside you might really be feeling like they're wrong, and you become passive aggressive or manipulative, or just passive in general, and back out of that relationship emotionally because of the way that they do things and the way you try not to. So work on realizing that the only way is through. Don't go off into a dream world or create a new vision for yourself. Work on the practice of self-discipline, just maybe exercising, taking a walk every day. Do something that isn't super hard, but that it does take discipline to do it every day, because you are such a tendency to follow the path of least resistance. If you can build up that skill of self-discipline in any way that is helpful to you to push through discomfort, just the skill of pushing through discomfort. And then when you're in an unhealthy state, when you're not spiritually finding your peace, that inner peace that you so want, that lack of conflict. If you can really rest in faith, which seems so abstract, but find principles of truth in God's word, that when conflict comes and you can say, you know what, this is absolutely the right thing to do, and I'm going to not compromise. And just take that step to not compromise. Speak up and say, actually, I as a Christian believe this. And deal with the discomfort. Find principles, find truth, and then when you take a step in that, recognize that you pleased God in that. Not asking you to be harsh, be gentle and long-suffering and abide in the fruit of the Spirit and all those wonderful things that are wonderful about you. But don't get them so pent up inside that finally when you let it out, it's be angry and now you're sitting. Be angry and sin not. If you don't let it build up, if you are principled and you have those truths that are worth stepping out for, and then you learn the truths of how to step out, James 3, and it talks about those elements of communication, then you can know, you know what, even if they are uncomfortable with me, and even if I'm uncomfortable with what I'm doing, God is pleased. So that's my thoughts on the type 9 and the wonderful things about them and how they can grow and what they should watch out for.